This is an interview by Helen Conover and her assistant Patricia Conover. Today we are speaking with Mrs. Constance Montgomery, 19 Liberty Street, Morristown, New Jersey. The date is June 27th, 1985. You were born in Morristown, right?
I was born in Morristown. However, at that point in time, Memorial Hospital was the only hospital in the area. But my parents lived in Madison, and so I grew up in Madison until I was about 12 years old, and then I moved to Morris Township. I went to the schools in Morris Township, and then I went to Morristown High. I never really lived in Morristown until I got married, and then I moved to Morristown in 1951.
Uh, your parents was born in Madison, then, right?
My parents lived in Madison, moved to Morris Township, and like I said, and then I got married and moved to Morristown.
And you have two children, don't you?
I have I guess I do. I have a son, and I have a daughter, and my children were adopted, and they have lived in Morristown all their lives.
I suppose they're all grown up now,
They're
right?
grown up, and
Mm-hmm.
one is still in Morristown, and one is in Chicago.
Then they attended the Morristown
They
school.
went all through the school system here in Morristown. That's
Mm-hmm.
correct. And my daughter went on to college out in Illinois,
Mm-hmm.
and she's now back in school again doing master's.
I believe we met at neighborhood house when the children were small. My children were small. Is that correct?
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
I remember at that time you played the piano so beautifully. I was telling Patricia, she said, "Oh, she plays the piano." I said, "Yes." I said, "She was in many concerts."
I used to play the piano. I don't play it nearly as much as I should anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Can you describe the layout of Flagler Street when you first came to Neighborhood House?
When I came to Neighborhood House, again, it was in the early 50s, and at that point in time, at the top of the hill, as you look down Flagler Street, on the right-hand side were the Flatiron buildings, and they were buildings that had the cold water flats, and they had just a toilet facility, and people had to have tin tubs in order to have baths. There were no bathrooms in them. On the left-hand side, looking down Flagler Street, were two brick buildings, and they were about 5 stories high. Then beyond that were individual homes as you went down Flagler Street until you hit the foot of the hill, which was then the old Ray Street. And eventually that area was declared slums, and primarily because they were homes that did not have the modern facilities, and they were eventually torn down, and now in its place are on the right-hand side is Beverly Gardens, which is a privately owned apartment complex, and on the left-hand side is public housing, which is run by the Morristown Housing Authority. So in a period of a good 30 years, that whole area made that kind of transition. The old Flagler Street, Nicholas Avenue area, the Nicholas Avenue area was primarily Italian, and the Flagler Street area was kind of a combination of both black families and Italian families.
Mm-hmm. What stores primarily do you remember in Morristown at that time, Connie? You don't mind me calling you Connie, do you?
Right.
Usually people remember the first name. Uh, you know.
Stores I remember back in that general area was the Fraganos had a little neighborhood store. In the middle of Flagler Street, Chaffee's had a tavern. And on the lower part of Flagler Street, Park Thurman had a store, again, a neighborhood kind of store. The Water Street at that point in time had on the corner of Water Street, which is now Martin Luther King Avenue, there was a little restaurant owned by Mrs. Scott. And Coriel owned a grocery store. There was I'm trying to think, um, there were still the taverns, the downtown tavern, and I think one was called Bucket of Blood.
Do you remember the old Early's Bakery?
Oh, yeah.
That used to
Really,
be on Ray Street?
That's right, Rolly's was on Ray Street. And I was trying to think what some of the other stores were on Water Street. That now is Pashadi's Dry Cleaning and the hairdresser. And there was a barber shop there.
Did the Vicks that they're now, weren't they in another location?
They were on the other side of where Roberta Gardens now is where they were. On that part of Water Street, there were three tenement buildings. Again, they were the same type of buildings that were on Flagler Street, where they were polar flats with no bathrooms. And just below those three buildings was the Vicks Market. Oh, and also there was a pool room, and which was on the corner then of Flagler and the old Water Street, which is now Martin Luther King Avenue and Flagler Street.
Did you ever remember Ray Street that sort of snaked around in there between the river and the playground?
Yes, and again, that was another area that had many tenant buildings, and Lily's Bakery was down the very end of Ray Street. But again, as I said, it was all of that area eventually was declared depressed and slums, and that's, as I said, now the family units are. On the top of Water Street was photography store, and I can't remember the man's name who had it. It's a black gentleman, and he took pictures. Okay, and he was on top of the hill. And as we got to the very, very top, then of course was the little bus stop, the luncheonette that was on the corner of Water and Park Place. And the firehouse was on the other corner. Those are some of the things that I remember. The businesses in that particular area at the time. Constance owned the gasoline station on the corner of Spiegel Avenue and the top of Flagler Street. I'm trying to think, Laura Mills had a beauty shop on Spring Street. And again, Spring Street was a mixed area. The churches were still there, Union Baptist Church and Bethel AME Church are still in the same locations as they were back in those days. That's about it that I remember.
That's quite a bit. You were telling me some things that I didn't realize was in Morristown. From what I read in the papers and hear on the radio, you're quite active in politics. You're councilwoman, I believe.
That's correct.
How did you get started in politics?
It kind of has a history. I started out being involved with the school system back in the early 60s. I had decided to run for the Board of Education. And so I spent 9 years on the local Board of Education. And it was the era when all over the country many school districts were working for integration. And Morristown was having a problem in one of the schools, which was Lafayette School. Now, that school was 98% black. And just as I joined the board, a suit was brought against us, the Board of Education, in terms of wanting a totally integrated school system. And we worked on it with the citizens in the area, and we came up with the scheme of making Lafayette School now a junior school, and Phelan Heisman School a junior school, and all the elementary schools, both in Morristown and Morris Township, merged. It was the first kind of integration of its kind in the state of New Jersey, because the Supreme Court supported and ruled that we would have integration kindergarten through 12th grade. And that's how the school systems joined back in the 60s. So after that tenure, and I decided then that maybe it was recommended by the board that I serve on the New Jersey State Board of Education. And Governor Byrne appointed me, and I spent 5 years in Trenton on the State Board of Education. And then I felt I wanted to come back home to Morristown. And at that point in time, as I came back to Morristown, we had a black councilwoman, Bea Jenkins, who was sitting on the council, and she passed away. And I went to the local Democratic Committee asking to take her seat. And because I wasn't a politician and into the real political arena at that time, they felt that they wanted to put someone who had a little bit of political finesse and expertise, and so therefore I was not nominated to take the seat. 2 years later, I decided that I would run for the council at large seat, because the way the town government is set up, that there are 3 seats that candidates run for at large, and we still have their ward system, and that's one council person from each ward, and they rotate. So every 2 years, you will vote for the ward seats, and then again, it's the council at large. So I won the first time, and now I'm up for re-election, and running again, and this will be for another 4 years as a councilman. I felt that Morristown had many problems, and I wanted to be a part of trying to be an answer to develop answers to some of the problems in the community.
How interesting. You just seem like a person to, go into anything and make it work. I've been hearing some wonderful things about Constance Montgomery.
Well, we have our moments.
What other clubs and organizations are you active in?
During that time, during my 30 years, and I've spent about 30 years of giving service in Morristown, I started a club called Poets Incorporated. I was one of the founding members of that group. At that time, we were trying so hard to give black students money to go to college, scholarship money. And so once a year, we had a dead ball. And it took us about 9 months to get the young ladies ready for the ball. And the young ladies sold ads for journals, and they sold tickets. And that money was then given back to them the following year for those youngsters who would apply for the scholarship fund. So that organization now is over 25 years old. We just had our 25th anniversary last year. And I've held at every office in the organization. And then outside of that particular organization, I, over the years, have gone to the League of Women Voters. I was in the local, when we had the federal funds, and you had to have local CAP agencies. I was a member of a CAP agency. I also formed another group that was called GOLD, and that was an acronym for GOLD. It was Group about Active Leadership. And I was trying so hard because I felt that Morristown lacked leadership people who wanted to take leadership roles. And I was given a grant, and I ran a seminar out at St. John's School and tried to develop some leaders for Morristown. And so I belonged to that organization for about 5 years, and that kind of went to front. And because Morristown has a way of, you can start an organization, and some of them are very short-lived. Then I was just active in just the local NACP. I was a member of their educational committee, the Sanford Urban League, and when I was on the State Board of Education, I worked on one of the committees that the governor set up for when New Jersey came into having its first state income tax. So I've just been kind of involved in many.
Just busy to be.
Well, yeah, sort of, yeah. So it's time to slow down, but back in those days, it just seemed like there were just so many problems. And just not enough people
Well,
to
I think
work on them.
some people just can't slow down.
That's right.
I'm one of them too. And you know, I should have slowed down a long time ago. They need people like you in Morristown.
Well, I'm hoping that this time I'm trying to work with a number of young people, and they were very, very active in my campaign because I'm determined now that I'm going to pass the torch on to some of them. It's time that they start taking an active role.
Yeah.
And now I have Raymond Echo, and he's young, and he's committee man, and I have great hopes for him to start taking some active leadership in the community. I have Karen Glover, and she did all my publicity for my campaign, and she works for the United Negro College Fund, and she does publicity work for them. So that, Morristown is beginning to get some of the young people back in the community, and I'm hoping now to really use my campaign manager. This next go around is going to be Brian Wright Jr. And Tommy Alexander. So they're going to head my campaign plan. And again, as I said, I think it's, I don't mind assisting, but I think it's time that I step back and let them get in the limelight and take over some of the responsibilities.
With the busy schedule you keep, are you employed?
Yeah, I work full time, and I sometimes wonder who I work for. But I work for the telephone system. I work for AT&T Information Systems out in Parsippany, and I've been there 19 years. And I've been very fortunate because my company believes that we should work and participate in the community. So when I was on the State Board of Education, they gave me the time off my job to go to Trenton and serve on the state board. And now with on the council, it's an evening activity. It doesn't really interfere with my job, but there are many, many days that I come back to Morristown. We've had many problems since I joined the council, or we've had a 7 o'clock in the morning meeting, kind of thing. So that my job has really given me that opportunity. I'm a manager, and I'm what they call a second level manager. I have about 100 subordinates, and I run 3 buildings for AT&T, one in Parsippany, one in Morristown, and one in Morris Plains. And hopefully by the end of this year, we'll just look at it down to 2 buildings. But I run what we call support services, and that is all of the services that the people in the building need. I run, like typing. I have all the word processing centers. I have reproduction. I run the mail service. I have the communication center. I have right now I'm planning to open up another building, but most of the kind of services is what I'm responsible for.
That's wonderful. What changes have you noticed in Morristown or Constance since I met you at Neighborhood House?
Those have been many. I think that the biggest change, we talked earlier about Flagler Street, was to see the type of housing that replaced the tenant building type house. That's number one. I think the next biggest change since the 50s was to see how the black community did go out and they migrated out of the area into purchasing homes. The other changes that I've seen have been in terms of the growth in the town, in terms of commercialism. And now, of course, we have the tall buildings that we never had before. The other things that I've seen have been, first on the positive side, we had begun to see minorities in key positions throughout the community. We had, well, we now have 3 black principals in the school system, as an example. And we began to see blacks in town positions, be it the policeman, be it in town services, the housing inspectors, that kind of thing. So they were all changes that I've seen. Also, we have less poor than we had back in those days. I think it was very obvious back in the early times when we saw poverty, and a lot of the federal monies have been poured into this community to give youngsters a head start in terms of schooling and things like that. So I've seen the school system change to meet the needs of the youngsters, and it's changed faster than some of the other things I've seen, like back in the early times when, as an example, and I've just been talking about this recently, PTAs met during the day. Okay, well now PTAs realize that mothers work and fathers work, and so PTA meetings in the evening. I'm talking about the county freeholders as an example. They meet during the day because it's convenient for them, but they don't realize the constituents would like to come to their meetings, and I've raised this issue with them, okay? So that things like that have changed. I think to see how the community has melted together and have worked together during the school integration program, it was almost 100% of the Morristown community effort into ensuring that the integration program was going to work in the school system. So that those are the kind of things I see now. The change to the contrary, and which is not a good change, has been things like Morristown no longer has a residency requirement for the police department. So many of the officers are new, and they don't know the community, and they don't know the people. The school system has gotten big, and some of the youngsters have a tendency to get lost. The high school is a beautiful building, but I think it's big and overwhelming.
They just recently put an addition on that, didn't they?
Well, yes, they did, and it's a beautiful building, and they have a swimming pool. That's been long overdue. But a ninth grader walking through those hallways, they get kind of lost. They've done more things for the youngsters who have the ability, that are gifted, that they offer programs. So, so when you talk about change, yes, I've seen a lot of change. I see, as I said, I even see the middle class people having more than they ever had before. Those kind of things. I think that we've had a tendency as middle class citizens to spoil youngsters, and so therefore the youngsters don't have the same kind of motivation that we'd like to see them have because of that.
I know what you mean.
And I think that's been a big disappointment.
Now, is there anything that I haven't asked you that you would like to talk about?
Well, I think it would be nice sometimes to I've been very active in the community, and I try very hard to work with the ministers and the churches in the area. And it's interesting to see how the churches have changed, and are now very, very willing and very, very active, trying to correct some of the social ills. As an example, Union Baptist Church is now working very closely with the Market Street Mission and trying to deal with alcohol abuse. And they have done a fantastic job, but now the parishioners are going once a week, and they're going into the jails. And they're talking with the young people that are in jail and trying very hard to encourage them that when they come out, that they should get involved into the church.
That's very important.
And I've noticed, as I've been visiting some of the churches, that some of the young men that have been involved with the Market Street Mission are now members in the church. I think that's a real plus, and I think that's one of the things that we have, we've come a long way, but we've forgotten that the church is the main source of communication in the community. And I've tried to use the church and the ministers to get the word out, and no matter what I've done, be it in the school system. When I was on the school board, I used to write to ministers like once a quarter to tell them the kind of things that was going on in the school system, the things I wanted to relate to the parents. And since I've been on the council, I've done the same thing. So that I think that it's one group that doesn't really get any identity or any recognition in terms of the type of things that they offer to the community.
Have you gotten around to Bethel yet?
I've been to Bethel, and Reverend Crawford and I and Reverend Mark, we were working at one point very hard on trying to develop some recreation activities for some of the young people who were just kind of loitering around and standing around. Yes. And Reverend Crawford and Reverend Marks have been the most willing, and Talbot finally came along and into the group. But in terms of the kind of things that I've done, I think that the most that I remember and the most, I guess, impressive things that I remember is the times that I worked at Neighborhood House. And now, believe it or not, I meet the young people that I work with. I meet their grandparents. And it's just amazing how the young people remember the role I played at Neighborhood House. And very often they will say to me, you were really tough. I said, you really were tough. And they said, but people aren't that way anymore. Okay, and they said, but we always knew where we stood with you. Okay, and
it means a lot.
It does. So through all of these 30 years, I think that 13 years that I spent at Neighborhood House, that has meant a lot to me. I've seen some youngsters that have failed. That's been very, very disappointing. But as I said, I've seen a lot that have gone on and done extremely well. And I think those are the things that make the most impression, and I feel good about in terms of giving that kind of service to the community.
Sometimes that's what they need, a role model to, pattern after.
I think the one thing that most people don't know about me, and it's very interesting because a lot of it never came out until I started to work for the company. But first of all, my parents were both from West Indies. My mother and father were born in Barbados and came to this country. And because they had a very, very different kind of life, my mother had to adjust to the way of living in this community, in this country, and they never had winters before, so that she went through a lot of changes in terms of our growing up. But I think the one thing that both of them did for us was that my father always said that I think because they were strange to this country, they wanted us to do the best and strive for the best that we could achieve, and they were not going to take anything second best from us. So I think I grew up with that kind of motivation, plus the fact that they were hard workers, and they always said that hard work wouldn't hurt you, okay, that it was an honest living, that kind of thing. So, coming up under that kind of philosophy, then I started my life, and again with my children, and all I'm saying to you is I think that when you start talking about family structures and what legacy one can leave, I think it's that kind of drive, and I think that all my children, if nothing else, will understand that they owe something to the community. My parents couldn't give what they wanted to give to the community, and I had the time, and therefore I felt that I could. And as I said, I think my children will, because they know and they've seen me active in the community. And they might not do as much as I've done, but they will do something.
Do something.
And my daughter has already started. She too. I finally got her to be a member of Claret, and so she had started to get involved. I think those, as I said, people don't know. I appear to be a very calm and very nice person, but the one thing that I finally learned that I had to speak out and speak up. And if I saw something wrong, that I just couldn't sit by and see the wrong going on and not do anything about it. So, therefore, I've always been one who wanted to be a good neighbor. When my children were growing up, my neighbors didn't understand that I would watch out for their children as well as my own, kind of thing. And as a matter of fact, this weekend, we're getting ready to have our very first neighborhood block party. And this neighborhood has come a long way to do that. Okay?
It's going to be right around
right up the street. And we're doing it because I feel that this is getting to be such a change in society that if we as adults don't get to know the young people and get to know our neighbors, that if you can't depend upon your neighbor, you can't depend upon anybody. And I've been lucky because I can depend upon some of my neighbors. So all my neighbors really they don't know each other. And so through the police department, we have formed what we call Lafayette Neighborhood Association, which makes up of Liberty Street, Linden Street, Hazel Street, Willow Street, and Hillary Avenue, and Port of Martin Luther King. And the whole object is that we're going to learn how to look out for each other. And again, as I said, I think it's an opportunity for us, and particularly me, to get to know the young people in the neighborhood, because at one point when my children were growing up, I knew who the youngsters were. Now I don't. And that doesn't make any sense for me to be living here and not knowing. So there is a fantastic association over on Phoenix and Cobb. And they are about 2 years old, but this is our first year in operation. So it's really interesting to see, just to see what they find out things going to be on Saturday.
I think, personally, I think block parties are a wonderful way to get together. I know when I was a youngster living in Morristown, they used to have block parties. But in later years, they just seem to not bother, anything like that.
Well, as I said, I think that we see so many bad things that the young people are getting involved in. And I think that we've got to do something to try to help the youngsters who really want to go the straight way. And also try to bring the youngsters who are not so sure which way they want to go.
They need a lot of guidance.
They do. And I aside from this association, when you asked me before, I also belong to a subcommittee at my church, and we had someone who passed away in the church and left quite a bit of money. And so I was on what they call the Wilkes Fund subcommittee, and we had $80,000 to give back to the community. And this year we dedicated it to drug and alcohol abuse because it's getting to be a real problem. So They gave the school system money to hire a counselor.
Mhm.
They gave the police department $8,600 to
Mhm.
continue some of their drug programs in the elementary and junior high school.
Mhm.
And we also gave the school district $35,000 for them to do with
Mhm.
in terms of curriculum,
Yeah.
social review.
Mhm.
Like I said, I think that it's amazing to know the number of youngsters in the community that are really having problems with drug and alcohol
Yeah.
abuse. So this committee also worked closely to try to coordinate to make sure that places like Shire House, which is a place where youngsters can go to dry out and get rehab,
Mhm.
that it will be open
Where
to,
is that located at?
it's in Mendon, that it will be open to youngsters who can't afford it.
Mhm.
Okay, and that's why I was on the committee to ensure that whatever we did, that we did it so that the youngster had no money,
Mhm.
or the family didn't, that they could get an opportunity to be rehab versus going out of the community totally, because there was nothing in this area at all in terms of rehabbing from drugs.
Mm. I think I was reading a short while ago where they were thinking about um, getting a National Guard or whatever those branches of the service to sort of go out and intercept those planes or
Yeah.
ships that
Mm-hmm.
were bringing, and then
Mm-hmm.
I feel as though that's where the source should be stopped there at the borders before it reaches the intercities. And but then they said they don't have the manpower. So when I heard this that they was going to use one branch of the service to do this type of work, I said, well, gee, that's good. Yeah.
Well, like I said, I think the young people have so many pressures on them,
Yeah.
and it's a different time,
Mhm.
and it's heartbreaking to know that they have to resort to this in order to escape. Where when I was coming along, the way we
I
escaped
never
was
heard
to
of it.
was to go roller skating,
Mhm.
to go on a hayride.
Mhm.
And when I was talking to someone not too long ago about hayrides, I never said hayrides. I remember Mr. Stewart in Collinsville.
Mhm.
He had a truck, and once a month he'd get hay, and all the kids would get on the truck and we'd ride throughout Morris County, and we'd stop and have ice cream, and that was the greatest thing that we could ever do was this hayride. And that was with Ronnie Stewart's father, up on Hanover Avenue. But all I'm saying is that's what's lacking, and you can't find today the young people don't want organized activities, and yet they're floundering. Okay, and so therefore they're falling back on drugs as a way of escaping. So it's sad, and I don't know what the answer is, but I agree that there's got to be some way to stop it from coming into the community because it's killing them.
Yeah. And the parents, I guess, by both parents, I guess, in a good many families having to both work, I mean, the children feel like there's no one cares anything about them.
You know,
So,
it's
so,
the working mother is really, 20 years ago when a mother worked, she felt guilty because she left her children. Today, it's such a commonplace that the mothers are forgetting that they have a responsibility to the children. It's almost the opposite. Okay? And everyone knows that in order to survive today, almost both parents have to go out to work. But there's no excuse for a mother not assuming her role as a mother with youngsters. I think the young mothers use working as an excuse of not doing things with their kids. We worked, and I planned my weekends, and my weekends that was the children's time. Okay, where it's quite the opposite now. Weekends are the parents' time.
yeah.
And so I'm just saying,
So
parents are copping out.
why have them at all?
Yeah.
If you know, you want someone else to raise them.
Right. Well, as I said, and when mothers tell me that, I said, don't tell me that. I want to hear it because you can do just as much for your youngsters as a mother who's staying home. It's how much you're willing to sacrifice your social time to dedicate it to them.
Well, I think I almost went out of my mind trying to get these two raised. I don't know how good a job I did, but mothers nowadays, well, I work part-time, you know, until I get up in the morning and, oh gosh, we live out in the country, the chores I have to go through.
Right.
And then send them off to school and then go to work. But I made sure the jobs I took, I'd be home when they got home. But nowadays, the children just going,
Right.
you know, the parents are out. Well, when the weekend comes, they say, well, they have to have some fun, you know.
Well, and you see, both my parents worked. When I came home to an empty house. And, you know, years later they call that youngster key youngster.
Yeah.
But I had chores to do. I had my homework to do. And by the time Mother got home from work, I had my homework done, and I was ready to help her get dinner together. So I never felt neglected because of Mother work. Okay? And that's the only philosophy that I'm saying now to parents, that they have got to make that kind of sacrifice. I remember my mother laying across the bed and hardly keep her eyes open, listening to us read, and double checking the homework, that kind of thing. Okay? So as I said, it can be done. But,
well, her being from the country she was from, they're a little different too, you know.
Yeah.
A little more, what am I trying to say?
Well, the emphasis was on, like I said to you before, making us learn how to do it for ourselves, okay, and ensuring that we were going to have a worthwhile life. But at the same time, I'm saying mothers can still do it today. There's no difference. And as a matter of fact, mothers don't work as hard as my mother did. My mother was a domestic worker, okay, so and that's hard work. Compared to, you know, I sit at a desk, I tell people what to do and whatever. And maybe I might use the brain power a little bit more, but at the same time, that didn't give me any excuse to come home and say I was too tired to do whatever had to be done with the children.
Mother used to tell me, I'd say I was tired. She said, well, I'm sorry, I have to put tired, and begin again. You know, you didn't get any consolation there. But nowadays, children are always tired, but they don't do anything. Oh, I'm tired.
That's true. That's true.
See, at my age, you know, a lot of times I just work in circles around them, and they're tired.
So I think that I can tell you about.
Oh,
myself.
one more thing. I wanted to ask, did you have any brothers and sisters at the time?
I have 4 sisters. I have no brothers. And one of my sisters is in Barbados, and the other ones are here in this country. And so we get, once in a while, we get an opportunity to go back and visit her, that kind of thing. So, but there are 5 girls as well.
Well, certainly was a nice interview. Well, that's all you
Well, I can think to tell you at this point in time,
Well, this concludes our interview at this time.